Yeah, just like to roll in pretty informally. I used to do a opening welcome thing, but
Yeah.
I don't know, it just gets kind of
Well,
weird.
normally,
But
like, I'm terrible at these things because I would actually talk to somebody on our team. I think it was our brand strategist, Elisa, which I don't think you've met either. I said, Elisa, I need media training because I'm not good at like interviews and doing newspaper. Even when like Audrey does it, like sound bites, I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think like some of people's biggest fears in life is public speaking
Yeah.
and getting in front, but also I feel less is more. You
Yeah.
know, it's like the less you try, like the better. And
Yeah.
that's kind of why our format is just, hey, let's get together, let's talk about your story, what your business does, and we'll just kind of go from there. And it typically leads to a pretty good conversation and
Yeah.
sharing some knowledge.
Yeah. Well, you know me, I'm a talker, so
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, so why don't we start with, let's tell people what Predicate HPG is, you know, what you do, and then we'll work backwards and kind of talk about the story and you and how you founded this thing. So.
Yeah, it's a good place to start. So Predicate HPG. HPG is Healthcare Performance Group.
Yep.
I founded Predicate HPG back in 2018 out of the need, well, it's an urgent need for better diagnostic tools and more standardized evidence-based treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Treatment strategies. I've seen firsthand where just there's so much variation in healthcare has led to poor patient outcomes, and in conditions like sepsis, it can be the difference in life and death.
Right.
So it started Predicate HPG as a consultancy, and it was kind of quickly because of my network and my colleagues in medicine. It quickly grew, and we were able to travel around the world to look at different healthcare systems and see what's broken. And as you can imagine, there's lots broken, starting with right here in our backyard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, U.S. healthcare, it's rare to never that you'll see U.S. ranked 46 on any list, but in healthcare, we're not the best. So it's a big opportunity to find out how we can, define solutions, how we can fix that.
I think when we first talked like a year and a half ago, when you're explaining the business model, I like facetiously kind of said, I was like, well, I'm pretty sure you could pick about just any part of the chain in the United States healthcare system, and you could probably find a way to improve it.
Exactly.
You could say that about most businesses and stuff, but I mean, to be fair, it's complicated. There's a lot of stuff that goes on.
Yeah, healthcare is funny because I've seen it from every aspect, and it's very nuanced. It's not like one aspect is the business, other aspect it's the science behind it, and there's biases, personal clinical biases, and then there's so much variation and heterogeneity in patients, and as soon as you think that you understand the evidence and you apply it, then the evidence changes and it gets updated, and then there's new technologies that emerge into the space. So I think that what plagues healthcare the most is that there's too much variability in how we approach treating patients on certain conditions, and because of that, we can't reach an agreement. The outcomes are never going to be improved.
Right.
So that's where we start. Is define the evidence, define the technologies that are supported by that evidence, and implement them into clinical practice. And that's what Predicate is really good at doing. Is we are a data science and implementation science health tech company.
Got it. Yeah. So health tech, I definitely want to jump into that and dig into that, and among other things. But before we go any further, I just want to, you guys won the Coastal Entrepreneur Awards of the Year for Wilmington Southeast, which is really cool. And also, you've been awarded some grants and some other types of fundings because of the business model and the vision that you have. Is that correct?
Yeah, we were very fortunate and honored to receive the Coastal Entrepreneur Award of the Year for this year, and we've gotten with our non-dilutive funding like NIH, NSF. We're still awaiting decision on the award, but we've gotten NIH, for example, we've gotten really positive feedback. One of the litmus test for a startup tech company is when the NIH says that your technology is novel and needed.
Yes.
That's always a nice feather to have in the hat and say, yeah, we're heading in the right direction. Because if it was the opposite were true, I would have said, time out team, let's figure it out. Why does NIH not like us? But they gave us a real high impact score, which is nice.
So yeah, how does that process work? I mean, how do you even get in front of the NIH?
Yeah, it's it's a very involved process. We actually had professional grant writers. They have to first find which grants we would be eligible for, then put all of that into a kind of a non-dilutive funding strategy, put together that strategy and present it to us. Then we have to figure out what is the lowest hanging fruit, timelines, and which one, based on our current phase of development, which ones we're most qualified or eligible for. And then they start the writing process, which is months of work, and it's very involved. Thank God I had them and didn't have to do it by myself, because that would have been a full-time job by itself. We had a team of 4 PhDs that wrote our grant, and then after review, submit it to the NIH, and then it takes several more weeks for them to get a response from them. So it's an involved process for sure.
So based on that grant writing process, submitting it to the NIH, you guys have gotten feedback that says, yes, this is novel and needed technology.
Yep.
And so basically it's validating your thesis and your hypothesis of.
Exactly. So the NIH, they'll have a panel of reviewers coming from different expertise in life sciences, and then they send you kind of the summary of the reviewer comments, and every reviewer comment has strengths and weaknesses. And the weakness is an opportunity for us to revise our application for resubmission if needed, and the strengths are basically, this is what we like about it. And with then they provide an overall summary from the NIH, taking all the reviewer comments into consideration, and their summary of comments was, this is novel. They give you an impact score, and ours was a high impact score, specifically for the OpenDX platform to be a technology solution for the early detection of sepsis.
Wow. So tell us a little bit more about the entry point using sepsis as kind of a way to deploy the technology. Is that still kind of the plan?
Yeah. Sepsis is, it's our current focus for a number of reasons. Statistically, it is the #1 killer in the world. 1 in 5 people die of sepsis.
I never knew that until you told me. That blows my mind. I would have thought cancer or some other type of heart disease or something like that.
Exactly, and that's what most people think, because sepsis is a syndrome, for one. It's obfuscating on patients when they present to the emergency room, for example. They may come in with a simple fever or fast heart rate or shortness of breath, and within hours that quickly progresses. If they're sepsis positive, that infection progresses now to full-blown septic shock potentially, and now they're in organ failure. They're mechanically ventilated in the ICU, and nobody, feedback is, nobody saw it coming. How did this start as a fever and progress to something now that their loved one is in the ICU? So that's our task with OpenDX, and why we chose it is that it is one of the more challenging problems in medicine to address. Is when in those early stages, when patients are presenting with those seemingly everyday symptoms, how do we extract as much as we can from those symptoms to infer a very precise diagnosis or risk of something like sepsis?
Because different people might exhibit different symptoms.
Exactly.
And so it's not like this symptom means you have this. It's you got to look at a whole range of data and then I'm sure some professional judgment in diagnosing, right?
Yeah, exactly. So OpenDX is considered a clinical decision support platform.
Okay. And so OpenDX is the software platform.
That's right.
That is part of Predicate HPG's go-to-market, or part of the product.
That's our product. Yeah, It's our flagship product. It's called OpenDX, and OpenDX as a clinical decision support system consists of 3 main components. The first one is what we call continuous physiological monitoring. So we will have like a wearable biosensor or sensors that monitor your everyday vitals like heart rate, blood pressure, blood oxygen, respiratory rate, and temperature. And then we also, we're the first in the world to uniquely combine wearable sensors with natural language processing, which, so think of kind of like any of the virtual assistants, I'm not going to say their name because I don't want to wake them up, on our smart devices, right? That are constantly listening. Don't let anybody tell you they're not listening.
They are totally listening.
All the time. That is natural language processing. And when NLP has gotten to where it is in the consumer space with like those smart devices, it was a good opportunity for us to bring that into healthcare, into medicine. Mm-hmm. So we combine that with our wearable biosensors. And the third component of OpenDX is you need a blood test with some kind of diagnostic marker to confirm or rule out certain conditions. So that the combination of those three components is what allows OpenDX's predictive algorithm or predictive model to predict the risk of, and then fill in the blank. Right now, our model is tuned for sepsis, looking for sepsis. In the future, that may be heart disease, COPD, it may be COVID, it may be, whatever it is that the world is most affected by. We tweak our algorithm and train it to look for those specific things.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the three prongs, I guess, of OpenDX, it's all about gathering data.
That's right.
Right? So let's gather as much data as we can and run this through some different types of modeling or analysis or whatever to help us, determine what could be happening.
Exactly right. And that when AI has been integrated into healthcare, or trying to quickly integrate into healthcare.
Yeah, it's integrating into everything.
Everything, right? Yeah, and healthcare usually is towards the end of trying to the laggards in adopting anything. So I'm glad that it's making ways into healthcare. And what AI allows us to do, as it relates to health tech, is it allows us to analyze vast amounts of data with precision. Mm-hmm. And it's already been shown with like computer science. So the different imaging. Radiologists interpreting, X-rays and CAT scans and different things. AI compared to going against like the human equivalent, the human physician, AI has kind of beat them in detecting things that are not seen by the human eye.
Got it. Yeah.
So where we use it, you're exactly right, is the OpenDX platform is agnostic in the sense that where we get the data, as long as it's good data, high data fidelity, and we ingest as much data as we can from the clinical ecosystem. And then with our machine learning algorithm, we analyze that data, we do pattern matching, and we contextualize everything. Mm-hmm. Every technology before the creation of OpenDX has been missing one significant piece of the puzzle. Okay. That's the natural language processing. That allows us to understand and extract out key words and phrases from what the patient is telling us.
Yes.
And everyone knows, your body the best. And if you're feeling sick, and you're telling your doctor you're feeling sick, and they may respond, yeah, okay, that's great, but you can't convey the information properly, or they're not asking the right questions. That is data that may be lost as part of the differential diagnosis. Right. With OpenDX, we're using AI, NLP, to extract that data from what the patient is telling us.
Because without that, like you said, you could be telling the doctor, I'm feeling pain or I'm short of breath, and if he doesn't write that down on his chart, for example, or like if he just takes that information, puts it in his head, that it ends there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't get any further into a prognosis or.
And to even compound on that problem is that the time that healthcare providers, doctors and nurses, are spending with their patients are getting shorter and shorter.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all been to a doctor where a third of their time is turned to the computer typing in the electronic health record.
Right.
And then so you could either be doing something or you could be listening. You can't be actively listening and typing, although some physicians will argue, yeah, I can. I'm listening, I'm hearing, but you really? Are you though? And so there's potential missed opportunity there. with that though, there are more and more of these AI clinical scribes that are making its way into clinical practice.
Okay.
So what that is like our NLP is that instead of the physician worrying about their dictation after that patient encounter, the AI there is listening to the whole interaction, provider and patient, transcribing it and putting it into structured clinical notes. So they have that already.
That's nice.
That will save time and allows the provider to intently talk to their patient.
That's amazing. So is natural language processing like in the hierarchy of like what artificial intelligence is or machine learning or whatever? Like if you have artificial intelligence at the top, like is NLP, natural language processing, like a subset of artificial intelligence?
It is.
Or like how?
It is. It's a subset of kind of AI, and AI is one of machine learning. So kind of this. It's all the terms can be used interchangeably. I think most people are comfortable with AI and what AI is.
Right.
And then we get to things talking about neural networks and different type of modeling and stuff like that. I think it's really technical in the weeds, but just to know that with NLP, it's using machine learning to analyze speech and then transcribing it to text or doing whatever it needs to do with that.
So you gather all this data using the OpenDX wearable and with all the data gathering, and then you run it against an algorithm, or where does that algorithm or where does that other data that we run the existing data come from?
Yeah.
So how do we know how it meshes? Or?
We train the model, a base model. Like this is basically, we give it baseline model from data we already know from patients. Like just we're talking about hundreds of thousands of patient records. And we sort through that and we define what's called clinical features. We say, all right, we're interested in these 25 different features of this patient. So it could be vital signs, it could be past medical histories, it could be race, gender, all these things are clinical features that we're interested in. And we've kind of filtered it down to these are sepsis patients and this is what characterizes from those clinical features, these traits from them. We call that kind of a phenotype. So we train the model on the sepsis phenotype. This is what sepsis looks like. And then when you have real-time data coming into the OpenDX platform, it essentially compares it to these sepsis phenotypes and says, does this patient present within these 25 characteristics, these clinical features, do they present similar to these phenotypes? And every one of those is kind of, there's confidence ratings on which feature is more important than others and is weighted differently than others based on its value to predict for sepsis based on studies. And so we have all that running in the background. What really is the fuel that makes it run is what data are you feeding the algorithm? And there's technologies that look at, we're going to trend physiologies and know if a patient has a certain heart rate variability, then that predicts for sepsis. Great, okay, we have that. Then other ones have natural language processing. We're going to look at retrospectively into the medical record to see what the patient, chief complaint, past medical histories, all these things to sort that out and see if it can predict for sepsis. Okay, we have that component. And then the third one is, well, we need to confirm all this with a blood test. Current clinical standard is a blood culture to say, yes, it's sepsis positive, here's the pathogen, bacteria, virus, fungal, parasite that's causing sepsis. So now you can confirm the diagnosis. We're taking all three of those to make it as comprehensive as possible and running it through the OpenDX algorithm to say, all right, now you have these, all three of this type of data. What is the risk that this patient has sepsis? And it'll give you kind of a stratified risk rating. That's, in a nutshell, how OpenDX works.
Amazing. Yeah, so it's starting to, I can see how it can increase quality because it's a more standardized approach to analyzing data. I can see how it increases the quality of care because you've got doctors focusing more on the patient interaction and you've got machines and other systems doing more the clerical or like, you know, documentation, data gathering.
Yeah.
And then, and then I guess you put those together, hopefully that leads to better outcomes and more consistent care, right? I mean, that's...
Exactly right. So it comes to full circle to our goal, which is to reduce care variability in healthcare, which helps to improve patient outcomes, reduce costs associated with healthcare, and improve efficiency with the. And I think another fourth aspect of it is about retention in healthcare. Post-pandemic, we saw this, call it a mass exodus of 100,000 nurses leaving their profession because of the toll that the pandemic took on them. And we're still experiencing healthcare shortages around the world. And there are, you pair that with an increasing volume of patients, not just volume of patients, volume of sick patients, aging populations, access to healthcare is changing. So that's not a good mix. So this is where technologies like OpenDX can really help to augment and offset those healthcare shortages, healthcare worker shortages around the world.
That makes all the sense in the world. Yeah. So how did you get from a consulting firm in 2018 to starting a health tech company, leveraging artificial intelligence and state-of-the-art stuff?
So Predicate's kind of overarching mission was always to take emerging technologies into emerging markets.
Okay.
It's always been our kind of our MO. And important to that mission is to promote health equity. Sepsis, for example, 85% of sepsis occurs in the global south, in low to middle income countries. Okay. If we look at the total statistic of sepsis incidents around the world, which is around 49 million every year.
49 million.
Only 1.7 million of that occurs in the U.S. So a majority of that is outside the U.S. It was important for me that all the emerging technologies that us here in the U.S. are afforded, be able to take that to different parts of the world, and that's and we were partnered with different tech firms and startups and all these companies. And then in March of last year, I said, you know what? We have enough experience. We have a very extensive network, and we certainly have the passion to drive this. Let's develop our own tech platform. And that was what spurred the creation of OpenDX.
Awesome. So tell us about how you fund, how as a startup, it's like, hey, we're going to build this platform. I mean, what do you spend as the founder and CEO of this organization? Where do you spend your time, and how many different hats are you wearing between like actually, consulting and doing actual work versus, raising money versus developing some of the thesis versus putting the team together? Like, what does that look like?
Well, it's, my role as a founder, my daily tasks, my efforts for fundraising, it's kind of like me trying to grow a beard. It's slow moving on some days, and the results are very patchy. So,
that's awesome.
That's kind of been my overall experience. But it is grinding as it is enlightening.
Yeah.
It constantly is trying to, meeting new potential investors, demonstrating our vision and our value of our technology, and aligning what their goals are to our own, and it's not always easy. So I can't say I've never experienced anything like it before. I mean, I can start the day fully elated and celebrating, and then end the day in a fetal position. This is
I get it.
that daily emotional roller coaster. But in the end, though, putting into sight what our objective is, and why did I do this? Why did I vacate my pursuit of practicing,
right,
and go to a different path? it's worth it. I'm excited every day because every day brings a different challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do you, like right now in the life cycle of your business, where are you spending most of your time?
Yeah. Right now, our main focus is on two key areas. It's very much chicken egg scenario.
Right.
One of my primary responsibilities as founder and CEO of a startup is to bring in money, bring in funding. So constantly trying to get meetings with potential investors. Yep. The investor feedback that we have received sounds great. We believe in your mission, like the TAM, like the scalability, like everything about the team and you. Yeah. So we need more data. I said, great, let me get you the data. How about you provide the funding to get to that data? So the second objective is, this is where I'm not sure if it's chicken or the egg, we're hyper-focused on getting our clinical trials, getting the proof of concept. Okay. And fortunately though, unlike like a pharma drug trial, which averages in the millions per trial, ours are in the low teens, thousands, to successfully complete a trial. It's very, very low cost. But we still need to do it, and getting the data will help build and validate our model, get the proof of concept, take that back to the investors and see it works, right. And to validate all the assumptions that we know are going to be true. That's what we're focused on. And as of a couple weeks ago, we were able to gain the commitment of a new trial site in the Philippines, and then also will be extended to Vietnam as well. So now we can say we have study commitments in 5 countries across 5 continents, and this is well ahead of our 2024 deadline to do it. Yeah.
So how do you get from Wilmington, North Carolina to the Philippines to Vietnam to Chile and in Ireland and all these places that you've been? Is it just one conversation leads to the next, and the power of networks?
That's exactly right. I would say it's more than just me blindly throwing a dart at a world map and wherever it lands, that's where I go. I'd be in trouble. But you're exactly right. It is the power of the network. Mm-hmm. It's one conversation saying, that this person, you need to talk to this person, having those virtual meetings, aligning to make sure that we have a checklist essentially if a hospital, a health system, a health ministry, a country is qualified. Frankly, it has the right criteria in order for us to do a trial. Mm-hmm. And then once that's met, we do a lot of pre meetings and then travel out to the site, see it ourselves, work with the clinicians, see the patients, and then train them on the platform. But it's I'm very proud that Predicate has prioritized this global health data first. Mm-hmm. It's very atypical for a company, especially at a startup stage, especially at a pre-seed startup stage, right, to go out and to go out this far to get data. But we do it for 2 reasons. Number one, the regulatory environment in countries like Chile, like Ghana, like the Philippines, are much easier mm-hmm. and more relaxed than the regulatory environment in the U.S. to do mm-hmm. a study. The second thing is that it's our responsibility as AI developers to collect data from a heterogeneous patient population. We see too many AI algorithms just are very skewed. They train on 85% Caucasian patients in a major metropolitan area in mm-hmm. the U.S. That is not it's not representative of the cross section of the world. Right. And because we're a global company, we need to collect data globally.
Would there be some value or is there some type of using specific populations like for example, like Chileans or Peruvians or people in South America tend to have a specific set of symptoms, whereas the symptoms of someone on the continent of Africa might be different? Like, yep. Is there a world where you want to have very specific, or is it better to have a lot of different data set?
So what we found is that because of how the OpenDX platform collects the data and what we're looking for, we found some interesting trends in, yes, there are comorbidities that are regional. There are different, because of the constraints or healthcare, access to healthcare and lifestyle differences based on economies that are going to be different. But because we are looking at natural language processing and using that as a modality, language is extremely nuanced when it comes to reporting sickness. That is culturally different. Some cultures simply are very stoic. They can go and persist with be very sick and not tell anyone. And to be able to extract information from them in any way we can. There's patients who are non-communicative, so that kind of NLP, which is not only, to clarify, is not only spoken, it's also written. Okay. So if they can't communicate verbally, if they can write or type their answers, or a family member can express it for them, that would help us, and we can use that data. But say if 3 bulbs, if one of those bulbs are burned out, we have continuous physiological monitoring and we have the lab test. Can we extract enough information for those 2 modalities to make a prediction as well? But that's what we found, is that there's a direct correlation from lack of access to healthcare to outcomes. And the continent that's hardest hit by sepsis is Africa. Okay. And you can imagine for a number of reasons why. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I just can't imagine gathering all this data. What else you guys are going to discover or learn, and that, I guess that goes to your point, data first. Yeah. Right. We're gathering data and figuring out how we can leverage that and use it.
Yeah. Mission 1B for us is to develop the world's largest patient database for sepsis. Cool. And we do that by collecting data from every aspect. Every data is available to us. And then curating that data into our database, and then using, essentially creating a biocharacteristics database for sepsis that can be accessible by researchers, by med tech, obviously in healthcare. The responsibility is knowledge transfer, knowledge sharing.
Sounds like a revenue stream there, maybe?
That absolutely. Knowledge sharing and knowledge transfer. I just think it's going to be free access. Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So dealing with different countries, I mean, I know, the United States healthcare system is more of a privatized healthcare. How does that compare to all the other countries around the world and ones that you've worked in?
Yeah, it's, there's many countries we work in have a more socialized system. So healthcare is everyone has healthcare on some form. And the split between, just in generality, between public and private is going to be different. So like Chile, for example, is about 60-40 split, 60 public, 40% private. Okay. There are, in many settings, there is considerable differences between public and private. I mean, you walk into a public facility, hospital, and you walk into a private one, it is completely night and day. Yeah. Also, the level of care. So patients who only have public health care are going to have longer to get procedures and to get treatment and things like that. Private, it's different. And fortunately, the level of care is better in some settings in private settings. This is just how it is. So
capitalism, right?
Exactly. That's. Healthcare is a business.
It absolutely.
And anybody who tells you differently is confused. But one of the things that we're trying to do is with OpenDX, we're helping to level set and equalize the delivery of care, healthcare around the world. Whether you're public or you're private, if you have OpenDX, the algorithm doesn't know that. It analyzes based on that patient's characteristics, what the patient presents with. And that data is what is more meaningful than do you have insurance or how much can you pay for this healthcare.
That's awesome. So you're this idea could really change healthcare around the world. how is this happening here in little Wilmington, North Carolina?
Yeah.
And how'd you find your way to Wilmington, North Carolina?
So it's a quick story. It's we were previously in the Triangle. We were in Cary, Apex for about a decade.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and then we came to North Carolina because we visited some friends and we just absolutely love North Carolina. And so we were like, okay. And while we were living in Cary, we found ourselves in Wilmington a lot. Right. Visiting, doing the usual stuff on weekends. Moved to Boston for an opportunity in the Boston area, and we were actually preparing to expat to Munich, Germany, because I needed to spend more time like fully immersed into the European market. Then pandemic hit, borders closed, and Jody, my wife, she said. Do we have to live in one of the most expensive areas in the country, Boston? Yeah. I said, no. Where would you like to go? And she's like, I miss the Carolinas. And I said, okay, well, for me, it's quite simple. Let's kind of pick mountains or coast. Yeah. That was an easy choice. Wilmington was always our favorite. So here we are. The company it was just serendipitous. Yeah. That we're in the city that we love, and then the company, the timing was good. And I will say this about Wilmington is though, traveling around the world, I get asked, first, where are you from? Wilmington, and then is that Delaware? No, not the other Wilmington. Yeah. And it just, explaining that, but nobody thinks of just health tech or startup ecosystem or anything like that when they think of Wilmington. I've been being a founder entrepreneur here in Wilmington. I've been so just fortunate and impressed with the ecosystem and the support system here for founders. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and it's kind of reciprocating because, and again, it's kind of like the chicken or the egg thing. And I was talking about this with Jim Roberts. I had him on the podcast couple weeks ago talking about ecosystems and startups, and it's like to get investors and to get exposure, you have to have a business, or you got to have a story, right? You got to have some poster child that's going to say, hey, this is what we did. But sometimes to get that poster child, you need the investment. It's kind of like this. So what you're doing also is, yes, the system supporting you, but with what you guys have been able to accomplish, winning grants and going to all these, national and regional conferences, people are saying, "No, you're from Wilmington, and you're doing that out of Wilmington." So I've got to think there's like a reciprocating thing there.
Yeah, one of the things, absolutely, and that's one of the things that, if I could describe it as giving back to the Wilmington community, is that, two things. Since receiving the CEA award, I obviously can't take that big 5+ foot surfboard with me wherever I travel. However, what I have done is I've taken the smaller version, the healthcare award, which is smaller. In our recent trip to Vietnam, I had it, and so we've been taking pictures of the surfboard in Philippines and Vietnam.
That's awesome.
And I'm just maybe during the next year's ceremony, CEA ceremony, I may have a short slideshow.
Very cool.
If Rob is cool with that.
Yeah.
To show where the surfboard has been.
Oh, I'm sure Rob would love that.
Around the world,
I'm sure he'd love that.
And it also, it's, we talk about women. We also talked about kind of internally in our company, thinking about like creating a tech center or a data center here in Wilmington. And I also like to create like a we call them beacon sites, which is centers of excellence.
Right. Yeah.
This is what good looks like. We create that there, and we bring people from around the world to Wilmington. The airport will be, a challenge for direct flights for international, but still bring people in from around the world so they can, experience. Obviously the beauty of Wilmington, but also create that reputation for Wilmington for being kind of a health tech center, a health tech city.
And I mean, with RTP just 2 hours up the road. Yeah. I mean, it's not that far when you think about it.
Yeah, it really isn't.
You've got a whole center of, excellence. Well, you got so many resources and so much stuff to draw from there.
That's right.
It's a fairly logical
Yeah. And
step.
one of the things, like, speaking of RTP, is we're involved with like Duke, and Duke having the reputation, and we're involved with them to do kind of a multi-site. So Duke in London, for example, the University College of London, to do a multi-site trial, and then to bring that attention, the trial sites closer to home, and then eventually we'll get to a point where we'll have our own, wherever it looks like, Center of Excellence or our own clinic that has all the access to all the technologies, both as a kind of a testing lab or kind of think tank, but also for a training facility where thought leaders in healthcare around the world come here to train and take that knowledge back to their home.
Yeah, and I mean, you spoke about the airport, but I mean, if you just look at the ILM over the past 2 years, I mean, how much it's grown, the expansions that are ongoing, the planned investments, all the new flights. I mean, things are happening. Yeah. And again, that's all part of the ecosystem, right? Is the small business community needs the airport needs the small business community. You need all these different parts of the value chain, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Everybody's got to work together to get it done.
I was, as you know, I fly a number of times throughout the year to Santiago, and I usually go through from Wilmington to Charlotte to Miami down to Santiago. Right. When I found out there's direct flights now from Wilmington to Miami, I'm like,
it's a game changer.
Could save a flight.
Man, that Charlotte airport is, I swear, every time I go through that airport, it's like a mob. Yeah. Every time.
Yeah, it is. And as soon as they always put your, especially with American Airlines. Yeah,
you're in like gate E29 or whatever, all the way over here, and then you got to run across the airport.
It never fails. I never not see someone just bolting for the gate.
I've been that guy a couple times.
Yeah, every time. That in Atlanta or ATL is the other one that's just.
That's another.
Yeah, I mean, literally, it's a mile in ATL. It's a mile from like the one end to another. So It's funny.
So what are some of the organizations that you've gotten involved with that have been helpful with, raising money, getting connected, ecosystem, nonprofits, all that type of stuff?
Yeah, I first, when you mentioned Jim Roberts and you, shout out to him, and his connections are extremely valuable. He's recently introduced me to someone I had a call with this morning that just has just so many international contacts. It's extremely valuable, and he's getting involved more with our company. So really grateful for Jim and you. The CIE, it's a CIE member. Absolutely. And working with Heather and her team, that's been great. The mentors. We were part of the NT Biotech Venture Challenge with Randall, and just the whole mentorship throughout that. And one thing I can. There's never a point you will hear me say, "Oh yeah, I'm good. I'm saturated in my knowledge level of startup. Yeah, I'm good." No, I know everything. Never.
No way.
Never.
There's no way.
Yeah, and there's so much learned, so much mentorship around, we're also, there's just I'm learning more and more resources with like Live Oak Bank and Canopy. I spoke to someone with Canopy. I know they're more fintech. But it was incidentally, someone that worked at Canopy also has health tech backgrounds and health tech kind of adjacent background. Yep. So we had a good conversation. So, and one of the things I'm doing is we're constantly on the look for like developers for different parts of our build, and trying to find more Wilmington-based development. Number one, I always enjoy having face-to-face coffee talk rather than virtual. Yeah. And the second thing is it helps to bring more jobs and create more jobs here in Wilmington, because eventually, this is for Predicate. Wilmington is our global HQ, and we have Ireland-based business entity. Yep. We're building up a LATAM-based entity. Eventually, we'll have an Asian based entity, but global HQ is in Wilmington.
Heck yeah.
So having a dev team that's based here and then attracting that talent from the valley and from Boston up there, bring them here would be great.
Definitely. How has it been? Most of the work you've done is with a remote team, right?
Yeah.
How has that been? Pros and cons, I'm sure. Tell me about some of those.
On top of working with our global clinical sites, I have in my office now 4 clocks with different time zones and labeled to which city it's in, because I'm like,
I'm too tired to do the math.
Exactly.
Just tell me what freaking time it is.
Usually, if it's like 10 o'clock at night, I'm talking to Asia, for example. I'm like, it's just what time is it?
Yeah.
And it helps to schedule meetings, but working with the dev team. My dev teams right now are all based in the U.S. They're spread out across the different time zones in the U.S., but still work in the U.S.
Yep.
And it's been a challenge because we are trying to it's trying to schedule across different time zones, and getting people's availability is challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, we have the dev team in one time zone.
Yeah.
And better than that locally here, and we meet in person. I think I'm not alone in thinking that the pandemic period where we were all isolated and working virtually, that we had this desire to work in person again, and be and whiteboard in person rather than do it virtually.
Yes.
That's something that I look forward to sooner than later.
Man, I was thinking about this the other day as kind of like a joke, but not really a joke. I mean, serious, to the point is, a lot of, we have like this virtual, work ideal, and especially in the younger generation, it's like, oh, I want to, I'm going to live in wherever, and I'm going to just work remotely and, enjoy life, whatever. Like, that's great, but I was thinking to kind of come up with a marketing campaign, it's like, again, kind of as a joke, but it's like, we work in person with real people. If you're interested in working again in person with real people, come join us.
That's right.
Because I'm sure there's a ton of people out there that are like, you know what, like being able to work from home, and have flexibility. It's like, all right, like, a day here, or like, got some people coming by the house. Like, it would be great if I could work from home today and just take care of some stuff.
Yeah, sure.
But generally speaking, man, I mean, pros and cons to both sides.
That's right. There's an argument to be made on both sides, but here's where I'm coming from, and this is kind of as a entrepreneur, you are kind of afforded your flexibility and your own creating your own and controlling your own calendar.
Yep.
But also, as a startup, without having an office and a team that's all here, it's all virtual,
Yep.
and there's human, I guess. Nature it is to work with other human beings, and on top of that, we work because we're an AI company. We use AI tools, and AI tools are this. I'll talk to a virtual, AI chatbot, and I think this is God. So I completely on board with you.
Friends.
I need some real human friends. I know it's sad, but I'm with you 100% on that. This is just there's a time and place.
Exactly.
Where you can you have to connect with those things, but yeah.
I mean, just looking back at my business, there is absolutely no way we would have been able to scale as quickly as we have while maintaining quality and all that stuff without working together in an office.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way.
Yeah. Right.
And that's what I would say, people say like, oh yeah, we work remote, like, low overhead, all that. And I'd say, how much actually revenue are you losing because of productivity?
Yeah.
Okay, rent's $3,000 a month or whatever.
Yeah.
How much more revenue could you generate if your team was more productive?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And how much better could you serve your client or whatever?
Yeah.
Again, situational for different types of business models.
Yeah.
As a professional services company, we're a human capital intensive business.
Yeah.
Where health tech might be more of a software business. You can create some software and then leverage that. But at the end of the day, man, like you said, it comes back to relationships.
Yeah.
It comes back to people, and without that human interaction, it's a critical part of business.
And that's what continues to help our success, is that it's just our network. It's our ability to connect with other humans around the world to understand their problems and how this could be a potential solution for that problem. And then it's just thinking through, logically, you can't get from just talking to a virtual whatever. You can't put a price or value on that. It's I've thought through how can we increase the speed of us getting together more as a team in person, and we're spread all over the world.
Yeah.
So it's but it's important. It's important for our growth. It's important for our success.
Yeah. Well, I would love to see Predicate make Wilmington a center of excellence and hub for all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Well, thank you for that. And it's Wilmington essentially through CEAs already made Predicate a company of excellence.
Yep.
We'd like to give back and to show what we can do. But yeah, we're going to keep on.
Good. Yeah. Congrats on all everything you guys have accomplished already. I know it's just very, very still in the early stages, and there's a lot more to go, but you got to celebrate the small victories, right?
Absolutely. That's how we do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again for coming on to the show.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was a good chat. I learned quite a bit, and man, we could talk about the healthcare system for hours, but it probably just pissed me off. Let's just leave it. Let's just leave it at that for now.
That's a different series. Altogether.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Morris.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks.